So actually an interesting tidbit is, for all of you who raise your hands with marketing, is there's kind of a big shift in the technology world where actually so much budget for IT is actually switching to marketing now. And we're seeing the IT budgets of marketing being larger than the normal IT budget of a corporation, which is just an interesting shift. So I'm just going to walk through kind of a little bit of my story and walk through some kind of tips for you guys that I think can help you in maybe your entrepreneurial journeys. And maybe we'll learn a little bit together. Pay attention, I'm going to maybe ask some questions. So we'll see how it goes. So this is my mom and dad. I like my mom's smile. My mom just turned 80. A fun fact, my grandma was born in 1896. And I have these huge generation gaps in like my family. My mom was, I think, 36 when I was born, and my grandma was like 45 when my mom was born. So we have these big family gaps. But my mom was a teacher of art. And my father was a mortgage broker. And I grew up in Southern California. Anybody ever heard of Southern California? And when I was in school, I loved music. I actually did like choir in high school and played in the marching band, played drums. Never played any sports. My only sport that I did was snow skiing, which I did almost every day, but never really liked team sports. And when I was growing up, my mom told me that I needed to make at least $200,000 a year to survive, which I thought was interesting because they made nowhere close to that combined income. That's what my mom said to me once, and I found that very fascinating, you know, her being a art teacher. And so, you know, as I finished high school, and I'm a little ADD, always struggled to pay attention a lot in high school. I actually did really well though, but you know, doing homework and all that kind of stuff wasn't always my favorite. I loved doing music, but I was always thinking about what my mom had said. So when I took my ACT, I was going to go to BYU, then I got a 19 on my ACT, and so I went to Rick's, and which is BYU, Idaho. And what did I study? You know, because I needed to make $200,000 a year. I studied music, of course, because that's what I loved to do. And I was a vocal performance major. I was planning on being a high school choir director, because I'm pretty sure they made that amount of money. No. And so then I finished a year and a half actually up at Rick's, and then I went on a mission for my church, and I went to Brazil. And while down in Brazil, I realized I felt like I was just going down the wrong path. I loved music, but I just had that number in my head that I needed to make more money. And I think my mom planted that seed because she wanted me to be able to take care of my family, you know, and not struggle. And so I decided I was going to change my major when I came home. And I came back to Rick's and I changed my major to business. I then left Rick's, came down to BYU because now I had some actual time, you know, to show that I was somewhat smart and they would actually accept me into the university. The 19 on my ACT with it. I think at that time, like the average score on ACT was like 30 to get into BYU or something like that. I only got a 900 on my SAT. So from a school perspective, you know, a lot of people I don't think thought I was very smart. I've always been much more street smart than, you know, take test smart. When I took the SAT and the ACT, I was like, where's the drawing portion on this test? Or like, can I write a song to, you know, get some extra points on this thing? So I've always been really kind of creative. And so I moved down to BYU in Provo and started school. When I was on my mission, I heard about this thing called the internet. And this was in 1995. How many of you were born even yet? So, right about that time, you know. And I'd heard about the internet. Now, the internet at that time, really, the Mozilla web browser had just come out. Most people had not really heard of it. You know, nobody really had email. Some people were using email, like the education system. But I was fascinated by it. I was in business school, and I was talking to a friend, and he told me about the Internet Club. And I thought, man, the Internet Club, what is that? That sounds kind of cool. And really what it was like a Unix users group, which Unix was kind of the back-end servers that would run the internet. And so I went to this club, and I wanted to learn about it. So I'm at BYU, and I show up at this club, and this is just how I do things. So I don't know if very many of you are familiar with like ADD people, but like if we aren't interested in something, we can barely pay attention to you, right? But if we're interested in something, we get super hyper-focused, and we can perform to an ability that most people can't. Like, I will literally work 36 hours straight on something sometimes. And so if I'm interested in something, I just go really deep. Well, I was super interested in the internet. And so I showed up, I said, hey, I want to be part of your club. They're like, great. I said, well, I want to be in the leadership of your club. This is the first day I show up. And they're like, okay, weirdo, you know, how about you be secretary? I'm like, sounds good. I then became the secretary of the club. I started promoting the club on campus and trying to get people to come and learn about the internet. I started teaching HTML classes, of which I knew nothing about HTML. But I would study all week so that I could teach some other students who would show up to my little club meeting about how to program websites. In doing that, I was also in a class, Information Systems 201 class at BYU, which is the very first computer class that a business major takes. And it's really just kind of learning the basics of computers. And in that class, on the first day, I corrected the teacher 3 times in class. And it was, you know, because it's not that he was dumb, right? He was actually a very smart gentleman. He just was a little behind on some of the facts and figures as he was talking about things like the internet. And at the end of class, he said that we were going to have some group projects. And there was a guy in the back of the class. And he had heard me obviously correct the teacher and all that. And he ran down at the end of class and said, I want to be in your group. And that was a guy named Josh James, who actually runs a company called Domo now, if you guys have heard of Domo. So Josh and I became business partners. And we kind of started down this path of a whole bunch of different businesses. We first were building websites for people, and I was building them, Josh was selling them, and then we started trying to figure out how we could make money while we were sleeping. Because being a web development company, we were billing hours. And I always say, when you have a business where you're billing hours, it's really just a job. You've created a job for yourself. You don't have a real business. And so we had a friend who had started a website, and he used to always tell us, John, I'm making money while I'm sleeping. And Josh and I would talk about, man, what could we do so that we make money while we're sleeping? So we started coming up with different ideas. And one of those ideas was a website called Script Search, which was a resource website that had CGI programming, which is all the little back-end programs that are behind the scenes on the internet that run the internet. And I was still a student. I built this website, spent about $5,000 building the whole website, and then I sold it to a company called Media Corporation for $200,000 within a few months. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Let's do more of this. And so then we had like 5 different ideas that we were trying and really trying to focus on something good. And we started one called Superstats. So as we were building websites for people, people wanted to also understand what was going on those websites. So we developed this little application that would then track the visitors to your website. And that's what then eventually kind of progressed all the way into what became Omniture. And I'm not going to talk a ton about my details of my story, because I want to get through some more useful, I think, tips and points that you guys can use in your businesses. But that became mycomputer.com. If you ever want to hear the whole story, you could probably go watch some YouTube videos and be thinking about it. But we had craziness, like where one day our company's worth like $60 million and we're going to be bought by a big company, so then it crashes and we let go of 70% of our staff. You know, it's the typical roller coasters of entrepreneurship. But eventually, we became a company called Omniture, which I then took public in 2006 and then sold to Adobe, as he had mentioned, in 2009. There we are. Look, I have hair. And you can see here, I'm starting to lose it, you know. That's where we ring the bell on the NASDAQ. What's funny, I actually see that little towel that's on in front of my keyboard. That's actually a mixing board for writing music, which I love to write music, so follow me on Spotify. I write like EDM top 40 stuff. So. Oh, there we go. So, is everybody paying attention? Raise your hand if you know the name of the person who started Omniture with me. In the back.
It's Josh.
Josh James? Okay, it kind of helps you a little bit. I'll still be, come collect your $100 right here. Okay. Let's keep paying attention. All right. See, be an entrepreneur. $100, whatever, you know. So since then, I have my new company called Observe Point, and I'm not going to talk about that a lot either. It's like super techy, nerdy, like I barely know what we do, you know, kind of thing. I'm solving a problem that was my main problem at Omniture, which is data governance. It has a lot to do with, like, when you get marketing technologies on a website, can you actually keep them implemented? Are they tracking data properly? Are they following privacy or government regulations? All kinds of really not fun stuff, but it's necessary. So let's get into some fun stuff. And I'll tell some stories while we're going through this, and then everybody will pay attention. I might have another question. I think one of the key things, like I talk with entrepreneurs all the time, and for some reason they're all waiting for an angel to appear out of heaven and tell them the idea that they're going to have and to start a business. And it doesn't work that way, you know. Your idea can be simple. It can be anything. I have a friend who made a ton of money doing a fence company. I have another friend who did a clothing company. It just takes grit and tenacity. Just do something. And if you keep at it and keep progressing, always inching forward, it really almost doesn't matter what the idea is. That being said, I do think it's smart to think through your idea, because your idea will depend how big you can become, right? If I start a snow cone stand, you know, that's going to take a lot of effort, but I'm probably going to hit some roadblocks, and I might, you know, if I do snow cones like no other, maybe I become worth $1 million, right? Where if I go into an industry that has a very large market potential, I could even become tiny in that industry and become worth multi-millions of dollars. Who here wants to be worth millions of dollars? It's good. I recommend it. It's fun to not worry about money, and I'm not a super extravagant person. I really don't care about having like billions of dollars or anything like that. But it's nice to not worry about, you know, hey, can I buy that new car? Or can I do whatever, right? And having been an employer is always trying to maximize their business. It's not that I don't want my employees to do really well and be successful, but for the most part, I'm not trying to make them multimillionaires, right? I'm trying to provide them a fair wage, take good care of them. The only person who wants to pay you multi-millions of dollars is yourself. Everybody else, if they're paying you $500,000 a year, they're trying to figure out, how do I get somebody more efficient into this position? You know, can I find somebody for $250,000 a year? And there's exceptions to all of those things. You can work in industries where you can make $1 million a year, but for the most part, that's why the average family only makes 50 grand a year, is because they're just working for somebody else. You are somebody else's slave, basically, right? In America, we practice what's called free-range slavery. where you really work, you know, for whatever wage somebody's going to do for you, and they've learned that that can be efficient for you, for keeping people in check. But if you're an entrepreneur, you control that completely. You know, you can, all I think about is, how do I pay myself $10 million a year, right? How do I keep upping that? So take control, but you don't need any amazing idea, you just need to grow it and mature it over time. I started building websites and then slowly progressed into what I did. It wasn't an immediate thing. But you do need to have a plan. And that plan changes all the time. You know, you don't want to get so fixated on your plan that you can't move with the times, right? Because like I had a plan, I was building websites, but then as I noticed that something needed to change, I changed it. But you need to write those things down. I still keep an active business plan right now of my current business. I present it to the company every 6 months so that everybody knows where we're going and what we're doing. And it changes because markets change. Like if I look at even my current business and what I'm doing right now, it is a little different than what I thought I was doing 4 years ago, right? But I do it as a PowerPoint. It's like really easy. It's like 10 pages, but I have a page for sales, a page for marketing, just keeping me focused on where I'm going. I saw some of you that raised your hand, you have pitches. Does anybody have a business, like a written business plan? Awesome. You can have $100 too. Right? Come get your $100. I'm investing towards your business. There we go. All right. So, this is the next thing though, is you just got to start. Remember I was talking about like everybody's waiting for the angel to appear to them. Oh, start your business. You know, there's never a perfect time. You know, oh, I'll start it when I finish school. Oh, I'll start it whenever. I actually think school is the very best time to start a business because you have nothing to lose right now. What's your worst case scenario? You go take a job? Oh wait, that's what you were going to do anyway, right? It's like, get it out there. Just do it. You know, our friends at Nike got it right. And there are some complexities. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you know, is your family supportive, is your spouse supportive, is your partner supportive, whatever situation, you have to look at that. If you have a spouse who wants you at home from 5 to whatever at night, probably is not going to work for you because I was a little bit of an absentee father for kind of the first few years because I'd go to work at 6 and I'd come home at midnight every single day. How I balanced it, I did a little differently. Like I never worked weekends. I was just like 100% family. We were doing things on weekends. But during the weekdays, I worked a lot. But now I can, not even show up for months if I don't want to. So I think it pays off. And that's how I just was kind of like, hey, let's work hard. And then we can, and basically, I mean, I was worth millions of dollars by the time I was like 25 or something like that. And I've been fortunate, I have a super supportive spouse. Getting the right people. You obviously have advisors here at school who can help you. My very first investors were actually related to the school that I was attending. And actually, I guess Steve Gibson, who's one of them, was one of the big supporters down here. But he was my very first investor with 2 other gentlemen. But those mentors can really make a difference, Like, I just think about all the mistakes I even made that if I just stopped and asked a few people some opinions, I probably wouldn't have made a lot of them. One thing that is important, though, is as you're meeting with mentors, realize that they're going to share you their perspective, and that's all it is. And your situation could be very different. So it's good to talk to lots of different people so you can triangulate on what's right for you in your business. Because I was in a technology business. Most of the mentors that I had all came from old school businesses. They had no idea the things that we were dealing with. Now, it didn't mean that they didn't give us good advice, but some of it we just had to tweak a little bit to adjust for the world that we were living in. You need to get the right employees. Don't hire people too quickly. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make, especially if they raise money from a VC, then they hire a whole bunch of people. And then, you know, of course you never do quite as well as what your PowerPoint presentation said you were going to do. And you can run into a lot of problems because that's a quick way to put yourself out of business, is having too many people on payroll. Fire people fast. If they aren't the right fit, get rid of them. Literally, almost the moment you think this person's not working out. And I have to admit, this is a flaw of mine. I tend to be really loyal to people, and it's really hard. But I've never had a case where I felt like the person wasn't the right fit that it actually ended up working out. And you don't have the time or the money to train somebody when you're an entrepreneur. And that can feel a little bit brutal. And I think as your company gets bigger, you can have some more infrastructure to try and lift people up. But especially in the beginning, you just can't afford it. You know, can they handle being in a startup? Negative people in a startup are just a virus, you know? You can't have it. Everybody needs to believe. Everybody needs to believe that we can be bigger, better, faster. You need that hustle when you're an entrepreneur. I mean, it just drives me crazy when I'm at a meeting and somebody's like, oh, yeah, I'll get that to you in a couple weeks. I'm like, what are we, IBM here? You know, it's like, I need that in an hour. You know, I think we were super successful because our competitors were sleeping, you know, and we just would take that extra effort. This might not be a healthy thing for you, right? I wasn't saying that entrepreneurship's for everybody. I'm just telling you what needs to happen in order to take it to that level. Do you want to do a $1 billion company, or do you want to do a $1 million company? You can go real slow and do a $1 million company. Anybody can do that. I am not a great reader, but there were tons of good books. I actually, in my English portion of my ACT, I got a 14. I think that officially makes me handicapped or something. But I love watching TED Talks. I'll read the summaries. Just I just don't have the attention span to like read a whole book. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person spent 300 pages explaining something you could have done in 10, right? So I do Blinkist a lot. If you guys have done that, like where you can just listen to a 15-minute summary of a book. But books are amazing. Just choose how you want to digest that information. It's like, I love it just because there's so many advisors that you might want to talk to that you could never get to, but they've written books, so you can read it, you know. I probably should mention that protect your equity, you know. And I always laugh when like two people meet in a class and they're like, okay, you take 50% of the company, I take 50% of the company. You just gave up half of your company in like 2 seconds to somebody who's probably not going to work out, you know. I was super fortunate. Josh and I did work out for a long time, and we were business partners for a long time, and it's actually pretty unusual. I don't really know of a lot of other companies where that's happened. So just be careful with giving out equity, because you can only kill the cow one time. So the best way to finance your business is to use selling. Everybody always thinks they're going to come and get a VC to just get involved. But it doesn't happen, Most of the time you can't get anybody to invest in your company until you actually have a prototype or you have active customers. So the easiest way is to sell. Let your customers finance your business. We didn't actually have our first VC investing into Omniture until we were 21 million a year in revenue. And we had some angel investors, and those are a little easier to get them involved and believing in you. But even when Steve Gibson and them invested, we were almost, I think we were probably like 500,000 or something like that in revenue. I actually can't remember, it's been too long. So, and it also, I actually do believe like when you're running a company and you're bootstrapping it, you build a better company in a lot of ways, because you have to talk to those customers and figure out what they're going to actually pay you for, because you can't afford to just build something and hope that somebody will buy it, right? So you want to really vet that. You want to be talking with customers, figuring out, hey, if I did this, would you pay for that? And you probably can get customers to finance your business for you. And that's exactly what I did. I actually would go and I'd meet with a customer like, hey, you need a website built? What can I do? I'd actually, it's kind of funny, I'd mock it all up for them, say, hey, is this what you want? And then I'd actually go to my friends who weren't even employees at the time. I'd be like, hey, what would you charge me to build this? And they would say, oh, I'll charge you $5,000. And then I'd go back to my customer and I would say, hey, it's going to be $50,000 to build this. That's exactly what I did. And that's how I find this. And what's funny about that sounds kind of crazy. It sounds like I was making a ton of money, but actually I wasn't. You know, and all that downtime and all the in-betweens, it's amazing how fast money just starts disappearing. We obviously also built stepping stones, right? Because we were building websites, then slowly got into different things until we finally figured out who we really were. Expenses are going to kill you. You know, everybody, I love when you see these companies, like they raise money and then they go get this amazing big office space that's only half full of people. I'm a big believer in, you know, try and have revenue ahead of your expenses. You know, grow that way. Don't put expenses and then revenue. You'll be out eternally fundraising. I mean, we've all seen companies that just eternally fundraise, and it's hard. We've fallen prey to that too. I mean, we've raised what, $29 million at my current company. But right now, our whole goal is targeting, you know, obviously number one, taking care of customers, but then number two, just getting to profitability. You know, signing that long-term lease, all these ways. It's so easy to spend money and so hard to make it. So just watching the expenses. A lot of people will say, well, we'll just get more customers. That is way harder than controlling your spending, right? I mean, really the only difference in my mind, and for the most part in America, between a wealthy person and a poor person is, do they control their spending, right? Because they're all driving a car, it's just what type of car, right? There's really not a lot of difference between people. You know, one's wearing maybe some designer clothes, another person's maybe wearing some clothes that they got at Walmart. But overall, they live pretty similar. But what really will make you feel poor in life is if you're spending more money than you have. And I know there's been studies that go out and like they interview people and say, hey, how much more money do you need to be happy? And pretty much everybody says, well, I need 10 to 15% more. Well, you could just take the approach and spend a little bit less, right? And not have all that pressure in life. And the exact same principle applies to your business. Because believe it or not, at the wealth level that I've obtained, I am no happier in life than when I made, you know, $50,000 a year. So, yeah, which I guess begs the question, why do you do it? I don't know. I'm driven. I want to make the world better. You know, all these other things that drive me. I'm actually not very money motivated. I'm customer and people happiness motivated. I just want to make cool things. And how you do that is listening to your customers. Then one of the analogies I like to give is when you're talking to a customer, they like to tell you how they think you should, like what you should do to maybe help them solve their problem, not actually what their problem is. Like, so here's an example or analogy is, you go to a person and they come to you and they say, hey, can I borrow your bicycle? And you're like, oh yeah, sure, here's my bicycle. And then, you know, the next day they come and they bring it back and they're exhausted. And you're like, hey, well, how was your day? What'd you do with my bike? Oh, I rode it from Cedar City to Salt Lake City and back. And I was like, and you're like, well, why didn't you borrow my car? And they're like, oh, what's a car? Right? Like customers love to tell you how they think you should solve their problems, but you need to dig into understanding what the actual problem is so that with your expertise, which is probably better than theirs, actually help them solve their problem in a better way. And that, especially in the software world, that happens all the time. Somebody will say, hey, I need this, like in my world, it was website analytics, I need this report from you. And I'd always have to say, well, what are you trying to do with that report? And then they'd explain their business problem. I'd go, oh no, you don't want that report, you want this report. Or you need this data API to tie into your system. So trying to listen to that customer, because the more you can truly solve problems for them and integrate into their business, you will never lose that customer. I'm in the software as a service business, which means that people subscribe to our software. People don't necessarily buy it one time. They actually pay us on a monthly basis for our software. And if I can keep that customer addicted to my product and needing my product and as part of their business, I will never lose that person as a customer. And when you continually add revenue like that, it makes it really simple to build a very big business. Right? Because if I'm sitting there adding, let's say, $5 million in new revenue, first year 5 million, next year 10 million, next year 15, by only actually adding 5 million, right? If I'm keeping that revenue. Focusing on the right thing is very critical. And it's easy to get distracted. If some of you are truly that entrepreneur type, which tends to be very, a little ADD, I say we're like little puppies. And somebody throws out balls in front of us. And we're like, oh my gosh, look at all these shiny balls, right? And then you get into your business and customers start telling you all of their problems. If you take care of a customer's problems, they'll start wanting you to solve everything for him or her. Where you need to figure out how to focus and say, look, I'm not going to get distracted by these things. This is what my focus is. I'm going to be, for my case, it was website analytics, and that's what we do really, really well. And if you start doing too much things, it's definitely putting your business, I believe, at jeopardy. Protecting your culture, this is easy when you're small, because your culture is you and like 3 or 4 other people, right? And you are the culture, and you're setting that whole tone of the office. But as you start bringing more and more people into a business, you are going to be bringing in other ideologies, right? And that can become poisonous. Who here is familiar with the company Oracle? So Oracle is notorious for a very aggressive culture. Their attitude is, I want to stomp on the neck of my competitor and kill them. Where other people's cultures might be, oh, we can live in this world together. The market's big enough. You can have some people, I can have some people, right? Well, if your culture was the, hey, we're going to be super nice, and you hire somebody from Oracle to run your sales department, what's going to happen to your sales department? It's going to become super aggressive, right? And that might be the culture that you want. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with either of those cultures. But you have to protect your culture, and you need to know that each person you're hiring is representing you. And that they are going to be training those next level of people. So make sure you're taking the time to always be reiterating how you want the business to be run. And if they aren't a match, even if they're your best performer in that company, you shouldn't have them there if they aren't representing the company the way you want them to be. These were some of ours, just kind of positive, hard work, putting in the time, and then we had a no jerk policy. We literally let go of our top sales guy because he was a jerk. Because it's just not worth it, life's too short. Oh, that was our company break room with a gaming room. So actually that rocket launcher actually rotated on the ceiling. And, we play multiplayer, shoot 'em up games in there. Actually, Quake is what we last played back in those days. So, how many people have heard somebody say, my company's in stealth mode? Has anybody ever heard that? It happens all the time in the tech world. And I just laugh. I'm just like, dude, you should be shouting from the rooftops non-stop about your company because it is so hard to get people to pay attention. People aren't just going to buy it. You'll see everybody. The other favorite thing that I see when people give business plans, they're like, oh, I'm going from 0 to 5 million in revenue in my first year. It has never happened. I just want you guys to all know that it literally never happened in the history of the world. I guess I shouldn't say ever. There probably is some company that's done it, some multi-level marketing company or something. But overall, things just take a lot more time than you'd ever think. And you need to be getting the word out. The other thing I'm a big believer in is just building those relationships, Everybody's somebody. You might think that this person's not important. It says a lot about you on how nicely you treat somebody's assistant or the waiter in a restaurant. But get the word out. Just talk to everybody. Tell everybody about your business, what you're doing, And then there's all the traditional marketing things too. But guerrilla marketing is free, right? And at first you have no money, so you need to just be talking to everybody about it. It's also interesting if you can talk to people in your industry to figure out some of the best ways, like in your industry, to get the word out, because it will be different for everybody. You know, some people are more trade shows, some people are more mass marketing. It's going to be different for you. Communication, I think, is one of the bigger breakdowns that happens in a company. A lot of people don't realize that it's actually not that hard to get a company to a few $1 million in revenue, okay? It starts becoming very difficult to get companies up into the 20, 50, 100 million and beyond. And I believe the biggest breakdown there is communication within the company. You know, you can micromanage a company to $1 million, but you can't micromanage a $100 million company, or at least it's a lot more difficult. You won't be sleeping very much, and nobody will like you either. So hiring those right people, right? Making sure that they represent your values, your culture, everything that you want, and then communicate to them and communicate to your company. So like we do, about every 6 weeks, we do a company meeting where we give an update, the CEO update. Every 6 months, we do a full 2-day offsite with the entire company where we communicate vision, everybody presents, we make sure everybody's on the same page. But if you aren't doing that, you're going to fail. I mean, one of the easiest things is like go into any company and ask, you know, 3 levels deep down what they do, what their vision is, what their company goals are, and see if they can answer those questions. So, listening, and this is a hard one for me, because as you can probably tell, I'm a talker. My Myers-Briggs, I'm like 90% extrovert. And you need to be listening to your employees. As you get more and more layers in that organization, it's hard to remember what those customers are saying, right? So you need to be communicating with them and listening to them, listening to your customers, listening to your partner, your spouse, whoever it is, and just getting that feedback on the business. Doesn't mean you have to do everything that they say, but just it will help you, you know, kind of act as GPS coordinates on like how you're moving through your business. Let's see. I'm trying to think of a good question. It's probably question time, don't you think?
I got the answer.
I like it. What's your business?
Putting a hole in a dog carrier on airplanes, because you can't pet your dog when it takes off. And you can't open the door, so you could put some sort of hole in, like a gateway.
Yeah. Aren't you just like most people nowadays that just lie and say it's a comfort animal and stick it on their laps? With your peacock?
Yeah.
Okay, well here's $100 to go towards that. I'm already thinking through like the market analysis on it, although the pet industry is fairly decent size, you know. How many you have to sell?
Travel industries are getting cheaper.
You know, actually, he just said something that actually reminded me of an important thing for you guys to realize. You know, he said, you know, things getting cheaper. How many of you guys think about cheap things a lot, right? You're always like looking for the deal, the coupon. Not everybody's like that. It's hard to, like, you got to get out of that student mindset. So when I started my web development company, I was charging $15 an hour, which I thought was amazing because at that time minimum wage was $7. And I was like, yeah, I'm making $15 an hour. And when you're doing a business, it's hard to remember that your personal finances are not your customers' finances. So when we launched Superstats, our product, we charged $9 a month and $29 a month for the product. Guess how much, like, our bigger customers were paying us at the end of, like, when I sold to Adobe? Anybody want to take a guess?
$100 a month?
No, like a month. How much were they paying us in a month for our product? So originally we were charging $10 a month and $29 a month.
$300.
So our top customers were paying us over $10 million a year for our product. But we can't wrap, like being a student and everything, like I couldn't even wrap my head around that, right? And so just remember that when you're going into business, you need to understand the value that you're providing to that person and price appropriately. Don't be afraid. It's really easy to discount. It's really hard to raise your prices, right? A funny thing is when I was doing the web development company, I started at $15 an hour. I actually did very quickly learn this. I just kept raising my prices. And within a year's period of time, I was charging $150 an hour. And I had only more business than I knew what to do with. Because people also associated the fact I was charging more that I knew what I was doing. Right? Who knows if that was true? But I made it true. I never let anybody down. I doubt you'll ever run into somebody who wasn't happy with, for the most part, working with me. I had to throw in for the most part. Who knows? You always have somebody who hates you. The final thing is saving. You know, our culture is definitely a spend, spend, spend culture. And we went through some really hard times in our business because we spent a lot of money and didn't save a lot. And when the internet, like in that kind of the internet crash of the 2000s, we ended up having to let go of a whole bunch of people, you know, to survive it because we hadn't saved for any kind of rainy day. So if you are in a business where that you have that ability, and I realize lots of times when you're a startup, I mean, you're just going by the skin of your teeth, right? So, but if you have, as you start making more money, it's better to be able to save a little bit so that you can go, you know, if a big customer doesn't pay you for 2 months, you know, that you can still survive. So those are some things. Let's go to some questions. We have, I think, only about 5 more minutes or something.
So this is a personal question.
Yeah.
Which mission did you serve in?
Brazil, São Paulo.
Okay, I just got back to Victoria.
Which is kind of funny. My mind was open. I grew up in a town with like 1,500 people. And I served my mission in Brazil, São Paulo, which is like a 20 million person town. I remember flying into the city and I couldn't see the end of the skyscrapers from the plane. It's kind of mind-blowing. Yeah?
Me?
No, in the back.
Me?
Yeah.
So you kind of said like to save money, like saving stuff. So when people say like you have to spend money to make money, like when you were first starting, was it easier because you had like the backers behind you? Like,
Well, we had no backers at first, so we didn't have that option. We just had to make money to then spend money. And I do think that makes you tougher. It's like, probably a good analogy is like if you're sitting there lifting weights, you know, like you get a VC on board, it's like you have people on the side of you, and you trick yourself into thinking you're super strong as you're lifting all that weight, and then all of a sudden they let go, and you're like, oh wait, this is way heavier. And then I realized, for sure raising money is just like that. But if you've never had that advantage, you know, you're just building your natural muscles basically. But some businesses require capital, right? I mean, go ahead and try and start a telco, right? You're going to need a couple $100 million to do that.
So in step 3 you said it might take multiple tries. Do you have any examples of failures?
Repeat it again a little louder.
So in step 3 it says just start.
Yeah.
And then you said that it might take multiple tries. Do you have any examples of failures that you may have had?
Yeah, so like, obviously we did the web development company. We tried to do a virtual server company. We tried to do a computer sales company. We had like 11 different things that we tried, you know, as we were just trying to figure out what stuck. So it's not easy. Go right here.
So when I talked to you earlier, you mentioned you built websites for customers like Zines and anything and whatnot. So my question is how did you initially like get those people's attention?
Well, at first I was just building like pages for like some of the professors at BYU. You know, I actually charged by the page. I was like, hey, $300 and I'll make you a web page, you know. And as I started getting more and more of that, just more sophisticated people were asking me.
Okay.
So,
You said, I think it was just like get the right people. And I've heard that when you pay employees well, they in the long run make you more money. How have you seen that affect you, how your employees were?
for sure, I mean, you want to get the best people that you can. I've also had very high paid people who were horrible. You know, that I just wasted, you know, $500,000. And that's just kind of goes back, I really think, to you hire slow, fire fast, finding people that culturally fit in with your business. But having talented people is very important. I'm the opposite of a micromanager. I hire super smart people and then I let them do their thing. So anyway, thanks for letting me be here with you guys today. If you asked a question and I asked you to come up, I have some money for you too.